Choice versus chance, how to make sure your store lives on after you pass. RIP, here lies my TPT store, beloved provider for 17 years. So I started selling on TPT in April of 2009. I've been here forever, forever and ever and ever. So back when you could put up a product without a cover or a preview and it would sort of, people would find it and buy it. So I've got products that are not seven-figure product IDs. They're really like 10,000, you know. So I've been here forever. And so this is something I've started to think about a lot. So the workbook that you have, you'll need to make a copy of it. And I think there are really 3 or 4 usable pages, and the rest just tell you a little bit about what I offer for estate planning and things like that. So tell me this in the chat as well, please. Um, Tell me what generation you place yourself in. Are you Gen Z, Millennial, Gen X, or Baby Boomer? Which of these groups, tell me in the chat or unmute if you want to, which of these groups do you think is doing the best job of estate planning? Getting ready to leave things for their children and grandchildren. Millennials are the winners. Of the 4 current generation groups of people who would be on TPT selling, it is millennials who are doing the best job of tucking things away and providing for their children. I think there probably also is a bigger debt issue with millennials. So I'm a generation off. My son's 13, I'm 57, but all of my son's parents, friends' parents are all millennials. And so I hear them talk a lot more than my generation does, Gen X, about debt. But maybe bigger debt, but millennials are doing a better job of tucking away and getting ready for their children. So I think that's a really little interesting little statistic. So here are some trends generationally. 84% of millennials say that it's important to tuck things away and leave them for their kids. Gen Xers came in last of all of those 4 in terms of leaving things for their children. Ours is the spending generation. And then I found this interesting little fact. Gen Zers and millennials are the quiet leaders in estate planning. Younger generations often possess significant digital assets, including cryptocurrencies, online businesses, and social media accounts. So they have other little streams of income that people older than them maybe don't have. So little interesting trend for who is taking care. So your presenter today is a Gen X. This was a couple of years ago. That's my little son, Samuel. My husband, Stan, also a retired teacher, and I'm a retired high school English teacher and curriculum specialist. I was a writing specialist for a large district in North Carolina. Chris, it was the Greensboro School District, Guilford County. So that's where I was for a billion years. All right, so let me tell you a little bit about how I got to thinking about estate planning and making sure that I was leaving my store the way I wanted my store to be left if I passed away. So I started selling in 2009. You see what a tremendous amount of money I made in those 3 years. I couldn't even get it onto the graph. I think in 2011 I made $17. That was the year that I emailed the owner of TPT, Paul Edelman, and said I've forgotten my password, and he called me and told me what it was. I mean, that's how much access we had way back when. But that same year in 2009, my brother-in-law, my 50-year-old brother-in-law, died suddenly in his sleep. And that was the beginning of the wake-up call for me, because what he left my sister-in-law was credit cards she didn't know about, loans she didn't know about, checking accounts she didn't know about. There was all this mystery, and he wasn't doing anything like criminal with that stuff. He just wasn't telling her where things were. So it took her 2 years to unravel all of that. And it was really hard to watch. It was painful to watch her have to suffer through that. And so that year, I bought this big accordion file. I keep it on the floor right beside me. I put stuff in it almost every day so that if something happens to me, my husband can just open up that folder and everything is in there. Everything from my passports to my social security card to my bank statements. So we're ready for that. And so that began the idea of maybe other TPT sellers need to be thinking like this because we don't really think about our stores as an asset that we might leave somebody. So that was the beginning of what started happening in my head. And then in 2014, I was diagnosed with invasive ductal carcinoma, which is the NASCAR of breast cancer. That's what my oncologist said. He said, your cancer is growing about as fast as a cancer grows. So I had a 2-year-old when I was diagnosed, perfectly healthy now. Woo! But that was the year that it became even clearer to me that there needed to be something in place because you just don't ever know. And then in 2020, that was the year that I surpassed my teaching income. That became important because that means that there is an asset out there that really needs to be cared for when I'm no longer there to care for it. And I need to tell somebody how to do it so that my family can benefit from the income and I don't just let my store die. And then this was the big thing. Karen Harris was my roommate at TPT conferences for years, and she died about a year and a half ago. Liz Brown is in my niche, high school English seller, and a friend. She died suddenly at about, I think she was 35, 36 years old. And then Barbara Balius was a close friend, and she died about a year and a half ago as well. So these are just a small handful of sellers who died very suddenly, no planning. Karen's wasn't quick. Hers was cancer. She knew it was coming. But the others, somebody found them. There was just nothing. They had not been able to even, I think Barbara had just purchased my estate planning product when she passed away. I don't even think she'd filled it out yet. So that's just people just they go quickly and you could go quickly just to be blunt about it. And so I wanted to teach you some ways that you could leave your store for whomever you want to leave it for. So let's talk about terminology. I'm not going to get into the weeds here, just really quickly. So just to make sure everybody's clear on the language I'm using. So when I talk about an estate, that's everything that you own at the moment of your death. It's passed on in a one-time distribution to your heirs. That one-time distribution, where it's going to go, is communicated in a legal document, a will. I'm sure you know what a will is. That's just a document that tells everybody this is who is supposed to get what. And then probate, a legal process for validating a person's will and saying, yes, this was actually that person's signature, etc., and distributing assets under court supervision to make sure that they're going where they're supposed to go. And then a trust, which not a lot of us have an experience with, is a legal entity that can exist for generations, and you can put things into it, and it's protected a little differently than the others. So you die, it goes into probate, and then things get distributed. That's what a will does. And then a trust is just a mechanism for you to put things in place while you're alive, and then it's distributed typically after you're gone. So money, businesses, personal property, things like that. So I'm 57. If I got cancer again anytime soon, I would probably set up a trust so that my son wouldn't suddenly get everything I have at 13 years old. There would be a way to dole that out to him. Okay, so which one's right for me? You want to consider a number of factors: how big your estate is, how complex your financial situation is, the sophistication of your beneficiaries. If they don't understand how finance works, you want to leave things as simple as you possibly can for them. And you want to just gather information from your accountant and your financial advisor and then create that plan with your attorney. My cousin is an estate attorney, and so I pull all this information from him. He's my source. And then just keep in mind that there are several different ways that you can combine some of these things. Just as a piece of information for me, how many of you have someone in your life that you have someone in your life who you think would take care of your store if you went? Not a lot of people can answer that question. Yes. Right. So my husband was a teacher, but he wasn't a high school English teacher. So when I talked to him about leaving my store to him, he's like, it's stressful because he doesn't know. Um, I'm not sure that he would want to take over all the pieces of it, like marketing and things like that. So there's no one size fits all. You can do this in several different ways, but I'm going to give you just a few ideas of what you might do to make sure that whatever your store is, that someone can benefit from it. That's the plan. All right, so let's talk about the TPT business itself. All right, big decisions first. Who will run the business? If you've got your workbook pulled up, um, there is a page, there's a page for this that I want you to start just taking some notes on. You can just type as we're talking. I want you to think about if you went, is your business big enough for it to be worth the hassle for you to leave that money for somebody? So let's say you're making $1,000 a month. Is there somebody out there in the universe whom you would like to make sure that $1,000 a month is going to? Let's say you're making 10, 15, $20,000 a month, and there are sellers who make that much. So those people are going to have to think a little bit differently about them because that would be a tremendous loss to the family if that income just went into the ether and there was no plan whatsoever to make sure that store kept going. So just think about this. Do you want there to be a new owner for your store? You just slough it off to somebody else. Slough is a negative word. Slough, I don't really mean it like that. Do you want to leave it to a beneficiary? Or do you want to hire a seller manager who will take over your business, run the business, get a cut of the money, and the rest goes to your family? So that's what I'm doing. I have a seller manager. I've already found someone, I've hired someone, she's in my niche, and we have an understanding, and we're working on a contract. We have an understanding that she will get 25% of my post commission earnings on my store, and then my husband will get the rest. So she didn't have to create new products. She just has to maintain. It can be as low maintenance as she wants it to be. She's not trying to grow my store. She's trying to maintain it, answer customer questions, go in and fix typos, things like that. So think about that, which one you would want to have when you're gone. So option one is that you can sell your store. I have two friends who have just done this, and I'm hearing about it more and more and more. So this is on your worksheet too. So store valuation, generally we think of it being 3 to 5 times the earnings from the previous year. So COVID and post-COVID has been so weird that what I recommend to people when I try to help them figure out how much their store is going to be worth is to look at 3 years in a row and then pick a number in there. I think the more current the more we get away from the pandemic, probably the more realistic your numbers are. But we are in an inflation situation. Tariffs are causing some major consternation in terms of prices going up and people having to choose between groceries and you. And so keep that in mind. We will not always be in the state of inflation that we're in right now. So next year could be better, etc. So here's an example for you. Let's say this will be somebody who's in the top 1% of sellers, just as an example. So let's say in 2023 you made $58,600. 2024, $75,000. 2025, $75,300. Things seem to be equaling out a little bit. So you might say, okay, I'm going to take 75,000. That seems to be where my trending is. And so 3 times 75,000 is $225,000. 5 times 75,000 is $375,000. So go over to your workbook for just a minute. Go into your dashboard if you want to do this now. We don't have to do this now. It'll eat up too much of our time. But go over to your workbook and start playing around. If you decided that there's just nobody on earth who would take care of your store, especially if it's your baby, who would take care of your store the way you want it to be taken care of. And you just want to sell it to another seller who might rebrand, take over your stuff, or just run it, maintaining all the branding and all that. They just do all the background work. So ponder that, what you would charge. The next thing you could do is have a seller manager. So this is an experienced seller who gets a percentage of earnings each month to run your store. So that's what I'm doing. Um, because my husband doesn't want to run it, but I want to make sure he gets the money from my store staying open. And so a seller manager, that's my favorite right now. She runs the store. She gets 25% of the earnings. My husband, the money will go to him. He will pay her the 25% gladly because he really doesn't want to mess with it. So that's one option, is to do a seller manager. And then if you have a seller manager, you need to create some kind of contract. You can do this with ChatGPT. Maybe I came up with kind of a rough draft of one, and then I showed it to my attorney, and he was like, "Yeah, but the person you want to sell it to is in a different state. I mean, the person who's going to run it is in a different state. So each state is going to have different language that has to be in a contract." So my recommendation would be that you hire a lawyer to help you with the language of the contract to make sure you're covered. You don't want to leave something out that's going to be harmful to either one of you, just to make sure there's not something that you're missing. So one idea is to do a beneficiary seller. You just let the store ride until it dies. This one makes me sad, but I think that's what a lot of people end up doing. You do the bare minimum of setting up sales, answering buyer questions as you're able, filling out tax forms, run the store like a seller. This would be my husband. So my husband would do the bare minimum. His name would be on everything. Emails would come to him. He just says the bare minimum until my store just literally dies. It's gone. Because customers are going to start getting frustrated. They're not getting their emails answered the way they're expected. Products are not being updated. New things are not coming out. This feels like a brand damaging strategy. But if you're gone, that may just not be much of a concern for you. All right, so let's go to this workbook for just a second. So under big decision number one, I've got this little green flower here. Which do you think where are you leaning? Do you want to sell your store, have a seller manager, or have a beneficiary manager? Or is there something that I didn't even mention and they're like, "Oh, I think I have a better way to do this." Unmute, throw it out to me or put it in the chat and tell me if you think there's a better way to do this. So for right now, just circle that. And if you would like to do your store valuation, you might be surprised at how much you can get for it. A friend of mine recently sold her store for $1 million. She did something interesting. She sold her store for $1 million. She retained 10% ownership of the store. And she goes in and does very basic stuff. Makes sure her sales are set up, answers customer questions. She's not making anything new. She'll go in and fix typos, things like that. She's very happy with it. The person who bought it is not terribly happy because inflation hit and her store tanked and she wasn't doing a lot to maintain it or make anything new, so it started to decline. And then I have another friend who she makes between $2,000 and $3,000 a month, and she just sold her store for way, way, way less than it's worth. But she just wanted to be out from under it because of health problems. She needed to let it go, and she wanted to let it go to somebody that she trusted. And so she sold it for a lot less than it was worth. But for her, for the mental peace of mind of her handing it off to somebody that she knew would care for it, that's what she did. So tell me in the chat if you're willing. This is kind of a personal thing. Tell me in the chat, where are you landing on what's your first blush of whether you're going to sell it, have a seller manager, or let your beneficiary do the bare minimum? Anybody have thoughts on that? Or were you surprised by the value of your store? Sell it. Okay. Right. And Lynette, the tricks there is just, can I find is there somebody in my family who would want to take this on and keep it at the level at which you've kept it? That's the tricky part. Okay. Anybody else? Okay. So let's talk about what you would need to do if you were going to hand your store over to someone, whether you're going to sell it or have a beneficiary who runs it or have a seller manager who runs it. You could give this binder. I'm going to walk you all the way through what you might have in your binder. This is similar to that accordion file I told you about. This is everything you would want to have in a binder in order to hand things off to somebody. This is a lot of work, by the way, in order to fill this out. Making it's a complete separate issue. I've already made that, but filling it out is the time consuming piece. There are sellers who do this in groups. Like everybody in the group will buy my estate planner, which by the way is on a really good sale today and tomorrow. Um, they'll buy the estate planner like in a mastermind group, and then they'll all do it together. Like that's what they sit there and do once a week. For maybe 20 minutes, they're like, okay, we're going to knock out our contacts page, and then they do that. So that might be an interesting way to plow through all this. Okay, so first things first, in your binder, I would begin with general business information. Have it at the very front. And your general business information, I'm going to get into more detail in a second, but that's just going to be your very big picture, 30,000 foot view of how to run your store. Then a section on TpT info and practices. Then a section on contracts. Then a section on finances and taxes. Section on marketing. I think that was it for that one. You might split this up differently. You might combine these things differently. You might have a whole section on what your products are. You might print your products out if you have so few that you can do that. Um, so those are the tabs that I've got in mind. And on the first thing, right past that first page is notifications. This is everyone who needs to be informed if you pass away. I've got Karen Lou in here. She's no longer with TpT. So these are like letting Amy Burrell Burner know, going to everything else, your accountant, your attorney, um, anybody that you coach, anybody who manages your website, anybody who works for you, contract virtual assistant, anybody who just needs to know that you're no longer with us. That's that page. That's the very first thing your person is going to just start going down that line and letting everybody know. For general business information, would put after that initial page would be passwords. In your workbook that I gave you, there's this little graph on the bottom of one of the pages. And I'm curious if you feel like doing it now, you could take those little X's and move them over. Which of these do you currently use for your business? So you have a lot more passwords than you probably even realize you have. Dropbox, PayPal, Airtable, WordPress, your bank account, Instagram, your affiliate platform, your SEO tools, Canva, your laptop to get into your computer. So you have a tremendous number of passwords that need to be passed on to whoever's going to take care of your store. So I would have a section in your estate planner where you put in the login link, what your username is, and what your password is. So if you do this digitally, if you do your whole binder for the person who's going to run your store, if you do this all digitally, make sure that you've got it very well protected and something that's hard to break into. I know a lot of people who are just creating a binder and then printing out the templates, and filling it in by hand so that there's less of a chance of this stuff getting out. Or you might have something like LastPass and you just tell someone how to get into your LastPass and then all your passwords are in there. So that's one page I would have. Have a section for contact information, TpT help desk, who's your attorney, if you have an integrator who works for you, who helps keep up with how things are supposed to work in your business, your accountant, your web designer, whoever does your marketing. If you got somebody who runs social media for you, have them do that. And so the longer your store has been around, the more of this you'll have. It took me several years before I hired a virtual assistant, and it was my best friend's daughter. She was like 16 and she was a really good proofreader. And I would just hand stuff off to her to have one more set of eyes on it before I published. So $10 an hour. So you might start out with something like that. There are people on TpT who have 30 full-time employees. I don't think I will ever get there, but there are stores that are that big. So have your contact information in there. An organizational chart, if you have people under you. I just made this up. I have one person under me. I have one assistant under me. So you're the CEO of your business. By the way, TpT is a part of your business. It is not your business. Watch your mentality on that. It's part of your business. And so you might have a VA and a bookkeeper and somebody who edits videos and so you might have some contract people under you. So I would not have my accountant in my organizational chart. I wouldn't have my attorney in my chart. These are just people who are under me who would know how things run. So Desiree is my assistant, and she works for me 5 to 10 hours a week, understands my store, and she understands what I make. And so she would be probably contact person number one. She wouldn't want to run it. She's not a teacher. But I would say, okay, you want to probably hire Desiree to be able to she's really good she loves UTM codes and she loves just all that little piddly stuff that I hate to do. So she takes all that little stuff off my plate. And so she would know how to do that stuff. She knows how to tax standards. She even understands standards. Texas, she just figured out Texas for me, bless her. And so if there's somebody in your sphere who could go in and just helps guide somebody, that would be helpful too. Revenue streams, if you have more than one, TpT is probably your main one. But like Chris, you have a membership. Some of you might coach. Some of you might have books on Amazon. Lynette, you were talking about a workbook that you've got. You might do affiliates. You might do live workshops. So just make sure somebody understands where all that money's coming from. If you have affiliate partnerships, I'm one of the coaches for the Your Data Playbook membership. And so when people come into Your Data Playbook, if they came through me, that's a little trickle of income that I get as long as that person is in Your Data Playbook. So any place where you are plugged in as an affiliate for someone, you want to make sure that somebody is aware of that so that they can either maintain that for you or let the owner of that business know so that that relationship can be severed. Build membership subscription services. This may be the most important thing that you do because all those bills, like my email subscription bill is coming due tomorrow. I'm about to have a panic attack just looking at the bill. My bill just came through for GoDaddy, and my other bill just came through for Zoom. So all of a sudden, these big bills are coming through. Well, if something happens to me, someone needs to know what to cancel. I don't need to be, my estate doesn't need to be paying for Canva and Dropbox and Zoom and Kit and my web designer if I'm no longer there running, using those services. Trademarks and copyright. If you own any trademarks, you need to make sure that that's clear because trademarks, in order for you to keep that trademark, that little TM or the R on the top of something, you have to maintain that trademark and go after people who are um, breaking the law using your trademarked material. So when you want to just tell people about that, or if you have gone through and gotten legal copyright protection on a product, you need to let people know that your product is copyrighted when you publish it. But if you've gone through and made sure that you do legal copyright protection where you've gone through the whole process, it gives you a little more teeth when you go after somebody who has broken copyright, then you need to let someone know that. Operating procedures, this might be a lower priority, but if someone's going to run your store, you need to tell them how to do it. How do you organize resources on Dropbox? What's the language that I use with customer service? How do I talk to my customers? How you make thumbnails, how you make previews, what my templates look like. And so what I've begun doing on these, as I make videos for my VA on how to do things, I record them and then they're all housed in the same folder up in Dropbox. And so when she's no longer working for me, heaven forbid, but when she's no longer there, those videos will still be there. And so whomever I hire after her, those person will have those videos too. And then it just saves me the step of having to teach somebody else how to do it. Anything else that you sell on? Etsy, Amazon, Zenler, Twinkle, Udemy, Shopify, any place where you also have materials, you need to let them know your information there. If you are an LLC, if you're in the States, you could do a limited liability corporation. I'm an LLC S Corp. So if you decide that you want to set up for that, so the threshold I was told in the States, my accountant said, he said when you hit about 30,000 a year, you want to separate that from your family finances. So those of you who are in the US, just that might be kind of a number for you to think of. And that may just be a North Carolina number. I'm not sure. All right, so let's go to the workbook for just a second. We'll just spend 1 minute on here. So I had you look at this list of all these things you have for your business. And then the next page is just very quickly who would need to be on your contacts page. You can type a couple in. Do you have any affiliate partnerships? Do you have an Amazon affiliate or an affiliate for any kind of course platform or for a course? Like every summer, I do a video for a couple of different seller summer sessions, and then I get an affiliate cut for people who joined that. Um, uh, my brain's not working, that online conference. And so I would put something like that in there. You can tell where else you're selling, and you can make notes of anywhere else that you would like to, anything else you might want to put in that section. And while I've got you, I'm going to stop the show because I want to show you something that's in your workbook. So this is something we mentioned at the beginning. Okay, if you go into this little link on your workbook, make a copy. This is a profit loss spreadsheet for you to use. All the formulas are already in there. So you put in your income for every place where you're making money. And then over here, you just start dropping in the money that you've spent. So if you, let's say, okay, I have a teacher course, and let's say I've sold a couple this month. Let's say I've made $200 on my teacher course. So that's going to pop up, and it's also going to pop up under total income. And then over here, let's say that I've gone to I've spent $50 on hard office supplies like paper. And then over on the right, I can get it to let me over there. Here we go. Over on the right, you're going to get total expenses added up. And then you're going to have total income added up. And you can figure out if you are actually making more than you're spending on your business. So there you go. A little gift for you. Okay, let's scoot on. Some TpT store information that you might want to have in there. Just your basics, how TpT works, things like that. If this is somebody who is completely foreign, the platform is completely foreign to that person. You might want to put in your terms of use the language that you have on one of your pages in your product that says, this is what you can do with this product and this is what you can't. Your inventory, this would be huge. I'm not sure you really want to have this. This would be a massive amount of work, but you can at least tell somebody where to find your inventory. So like if you're in TpT, you can go to just send them the product listings. At least tell them how to get over there so they can see what you have. If you're in the Your Data Playbook membership, there's a little place where you can click on your product inventory and there's a spreadsheet in there. So I know one or two of you are in there. All right, so that's something I would include. Customer service practices, like I answer customer service questions on TpT within 24 hours of the question being posted. How quickly I respond to emails, how I respond to misleading reviews professionally. Be very clear about the language that you use. No snark, no sarcasm when you're responding to really, really bad reviews. You don't remember reviews. Your response to a review is for the next person reading it, not for the person who wrote it, because they're never going to look at that. But it's for the next person who reads it and they want to see how you respond to negative reviews. Historical sales data, you might just want to give them a spreadsheet, how much each product historically has made. All of this is now available on TpT. You don't need to do this manually. So if you just tell them how to use the new product insights on your dashboard on TpT, that's enough for that. Resource workflow, I got a little OCD on this one, which I want to do. This is my whole process of what I would go through to create a product, do all the pieces of it, like thumbnails, previews, description, how I would market it, and then, rinse and repeat. And so I would give them a workflow of if you're gonna make something new for my business, like if you handed this over to another seller to manage, this is my general workflow of how I do that, but everybody's going to do this differently. Okay, so I'm not going to stop here, but if you want to take the time later, go in and look at this page on the estate planner and just kind of jot down some ideas of other things you think you might want to have in your on that tab. Contracts, you might not have this. This is just if you've got a contract with somebody who works for you, or if you've got a contract with, okay, so a couple of years ago, I hired a woman to do SEO for my blog. Like she would take a post at a time, tell me where my problems were, tell me how to fix them. She didn't do the work. She would just tell me what to do, and she charged me $100 a blog post. Worth every single penny. I've made so much money off the post that she did, but nothing else, just the one she did. So the agreement that I have with her, whatever contract I have with her, I would put in a binder. Any kind of management agreement for somebody who's going to take over your store. And we don't have to do this right now, but if you want to, jot anything in there about what you might put in a contracts section, so much of what I do is loose. Like my assistant is a good friend of mine. We go to church together. Like she and I have just sort of this super casual way that we operate with each other. But if I start hiring her more, if she comes on as an employee, not just a contract person, then I might want to have a contract for her. And then this is the awful part, the financial stuff. So What are your assets? Where are your debts? How much do you owe? How much do you have? How much is your business worth? At the end of the day, do you bring in more than you send out? This is a spreadsheet that I gave you the link for. Banking information, get it all in there so they can access your bank. This may not be something that you want to give to everybody in the world, but this would definitely be something you want to give a family member who's a beneficiary. Taxes, also not very fun. So if you're at the point where you're paying income tax on your TpT earnings, I do mine monthly. So North Carolina Department of Revenue, I have PIN numbers and passwords and usernames and all that for when I pay my payroll taxes every month. EFPTS, that's the platform that I use to pay my federal taxes. I have all that information in there as well. So tell people how to pay taxes so you don't get dinged at the end of the year for missing some payments. And then if you want to, pop into the workbook and take a look at the financial section. I'm not going to use your time on that. And then marketing. Tell people what your brand is, what your brand colors are, where your branding photos are. You might even want to leave files in there with, if you've ever had a branding photo shoot, you might have that in there. Make sure they know the hex code for your branding colors. And if you don't have those, you need to have them so that your products look uniform across the board. Who's your customer base? Help somebody understand who your ideal customer is. What your website is, how to get into it, who maintains it, who does the background coding and that kind of stuff for your website. When you promote, how you promote. So my Shakespeare Valentine bookmarks, the season for them is Valentine's Day. Start promoting February 1. It's probably too late. This is just an example. But just tell them what to promote and when. How to do email marketing, how to do Facebook ads if you really want to get into the weeds with marketing. Social media. Oh, so much hatred is in my heart for social media. It is not a fun thing for me. I'm on it, but I don't like promoting on it, but I do it. It's just painful. So whatever you're on, tell people how to operate that for you. And then I've got this already done if you're interested. I've got this whole thing already mapped out. I have 118 five-star reviews, great reviews on there, and there is a link to it in your workbook. Okay, I think that's it for my shebang. Yeah, and I've got a website. If you go to angiekratzer.com, help for TpT sellers, I got all kinds of little stuff on there that you can grab.